talk about party lines perceptions, you are absolutely right. I mean, Republicans in majority they are supporting this war. But I mean, even some senators like Richard Blumenthal, who objected that since we don't have a money to fight this war, and we must not linger on this war, we don't have a way out or end game of this war. This is their perception. But even Joseph Kant, who resigned 3 days back with the resignation, he mentioned that since there was no threat from Iran and President is not listening them, even I think J.D. Vance, who has certain reservation on this war. But what is public opinion, popular opinion? You talked about the perception of the leadership of the Congress. You mentioned perception on the basis of party lines. What is a popular perception in American people? What they want?
I think as a whole, you take the party lines out. As a whole, Americans don't want to be in this situation. Um, it's a difficult situation because, like you said, we just finished the Afghanistan war. We did not want to go into another war, and part of President Trump's success in his election was the promise of no new wars. So that is dividing people. The left is using those words against him every day in the media, like President Trump promised no new wars, and here we are in a new war. On the right, that's where some of that 11% that I talked about is coming from, where they said we were not supposed to be in any more wars, and here we are in another war. Um, so that does hurt President Trump, making that campaign promise and not being able to fulfill it. However, we also have to live in reality that we can't predict when a conflict is going to happen. We can't predict when an opportunity presents itself in the international kind of scenario of things. And I think that's what happened. We knew that we wanted to attack Iran due to the nuclear programs, due to the ballistic missiles, which I think was more of a concern of Israel than it was of ours. I think when all of those Iranian leaders ended up in one spot, that was when President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu came together and said, this is a golden opportunity to really cripple the leadership of Iran, and they took it. Had they not all convened in the same spot, I don't believe that this war would have started, at least not now. It would have started probably later. However, the opportunity presented itself, and they took advantage of it.
What is your understanding, your take on regarding this war? Does America has a grip on this war, or America is losing grip because Wali Nasser, John Mearsheimer, Scott Ritter, even Indian defense analysts like Paraveen Saini, they believe that this war is out of American hands, and even John Mearsheimer believes that there is a bunch of I mean, this is awkward word, but his own words, bunch of fools are in the White House and they are shooting their own feet.
I think it just depends on how you define winning the war, and what the initial objectives were compared to what's realistically achievable. And that does make a difference. I do believe that the ideal of Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump, that the initial bombardment would have crippled Iran so much that it would have collapsed their government very quickly. However, that did not happen. So what we do is we have a course correct. And when that course correct happened, and they came up with the next round of strategy, which I'm sure they had it, they knew that this was the contingency plan. Now we're in a pressure. What I see from my perspective is a pressure situation. They have constantly put pressure on the Iranian military to defend Iran's missile sites, nuclear sites. And now they announced today that we're going to be sending in the A-10 Warthogs and the Apache helicopters. So that tells me we're going into another phase of this conflict, where we're going to be seeing a more agile movement by our military personnel. We're going to be hitting tighter targets, where we have to be able to get in and out very quickly. So we're going to see another phase start to happen. I do think that there is a plan. I do think that with midterms coming up, they do have an exit strategy. I think once they feel that they have decimated enough missile launching stations, the factories that generate the missiles, the nuclear sites. I believe, and once the Strait of Hormuz is back as free flowing, we're going to see the United States start to back out of this. That would be a good opportunity to move away and say we've completed our objectives. Now we're going to go back to normal. A lot of the media are reporting that President Trump, made this regime change promise. Yeah, he's talked about it, but he's ultimately left it in the hands of the Iranian people. We're gonna achieve our targets to where they can't attack with missiles, with their neighbors or Israel. We're gonna achieve those goals. After that, once we pull back, it's going to be up to the Iranian people. We're going to really see what the real story is. Are there way more people that resist the IRGC and the Iranian government, or are they a heavy minority? So we'll see how that kind of works itself out, but it's going to ultimately be up to the Iranian people.
Eric, if you go into the history and we find the pattern and regularity in the behavior of Iranians since 1979, when they brought this cultural revolution. They call it Islamic revolution, but in my viewpoint, it's a cultural revolution. Since then, we are observing that Iranians, they are very resilient because of their civilizational character. They faced 8 years war against Iraq, and Iraq was supported by whole of the West, even the Arab countries. And they sustained under very heavy sanctions from United States of America, European Union, as well as United Nations. And we see that after this war, their regime is more stronger, and people, they are openly supporting them. IRGC is more powerful, and we do not see that they are in a weakening position, because the way they are attacking with the 1,000 pounds, payloads, and they are hitting Israel especially, and American bases in the region. Do you not think, there should be a way out? This war has to be ended, and it is in the favor of all parties.
Yeah, I agree. There needs to be some kind of dialogue. President Trump is saying that there are some Iranian department heads that are reaching out to our department heads and trying to communicate. So I think that's a good sign. Obviously, it would be a much better solution to have a diplomatic ending to this war. We don't want to see another school full of children get blown up, or having civilian areas being targeted. Both sides are going to be guilty of all that. So we don't want to see those things. So a diplomatic solution is going to be a much better option. As to whether that happens, I'm not quite sure. I can't really get a feel from President Trump's speeches as to if there's really any progress going on with that or not. I would hope so. And seeing how President Trump has worked some of his deals with some of these countries in just the recent past, I do think that he is going to take talks seriously and give consideration to them. Right now, he's very careful to not tip his hand on anything that's going on right now, just simply because he doesn't want to lose strategic advantage, and I understand that. However, a diplomatic solution would be the way to go. We would like to see Iran enter the global markets and enter into proper and willful trade with the world. We would like to take the tension out of the Middle East. President Trump has made it very clear, even going back to his first administration with the Abraham Accords, he does have a soft spot for the Middle East. He wants to do a lot of business with the Middle East. And with Saudi Arabia pledging a U.S. investment, there's a lot to lose in that region between the Arab states and the United States. We want to work with the Arab countries. So Iran just seems to be the only kind of dissident of that, and we want to bring them to the table. And that's, I think that's something we've been trying to do for the several months, is how do we get Iran to the negotiation table to include them into the global markets.